But I'll be honest, there's no one perfect system, and there's no one app that I say everybody should use it. I think there's a lot of opportunity, hence everybody should try different things and see what works for them as long as it sticks. So first of all, for many people, when you say AI, machine learning, it's still very intimidating, right? But the reality is it's all around us. We just don't even realize that our entire life is actually, is functioning based on our Netflix, right? Our internet feed, everything is already based on AI. We're thinking about the future, not the current state, right? A current state, I think of access, like how are we more efficient in making a patient appointment? Already sounds archaic just saying it, right? So it's the strategy, thinking about the future. How do you build in preventative care into your existing practice? So it's those engagements that are future thinking, people who are trying to be innovative, who are thinking about technology, who are asking us about what technology have you seen out there? Those are the engagements that are most satisfying because it makes us all think, right? It makes us all think about the future.
Hello, everyone. This is Arvind Sarin, your host and the CEO and chairman of Copper Digital. Welcome to another episode of HealthTech Innovation 2024-25, where we unravel the latest and greatest in the world of health technology. Folks, you've got a powerhouse guest today. This expert isn't just navigating the healthcare wave, she's sculpting it with a playbook that spans everything from budgeting to clinical research ops. Our guest is the Vice President of Care Transformation Services at MedAxiom, an ACC company. She's the genius pulling the strings, seamlessly weaving together hospitals and physician organizations, making faculty transitions a breeze, and launching innovative healthcare startups. Joining us in the spotlight today is the extraordinary Ana Mercurio-Pinto. Stick around as we tap into her insights on the health tech trends poised to dominate in 2024-25. Trust me, you won't want to miss a minute of this episode. Ana, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. I appreciate your energy, your ability to make the idea of a budget exciting.
Well, there's just so much more that you've done, and I can't wait to get into that conversation. So far, leading up to this conversation as well, I've been just really fascinated about the conversation that we're about to have. But let's begin with, if you can share with the audience about your journey on how you found yourself at the intersection of healthcare transformation and technology with MedAxiom.
Well, first, thank you again for having me here. This is an exciting topic for me. But yeah, I'm happy to give you a little bit of background. I truly just fell into healthcare to begin with, but more importantly, once you see a little bit, you want to know more, right? So for me, a couple of years ago, I had this amazing opportunity to work with American Heart Association and One Brave Idea. I was already part of academic healthcare, specifically cardiovascular medicine. But in that, we tapped into the abilities of digital healthcare, right? And you see the possibilities. And once you see the possibilities, you don't want to go back, right? Going back feels like you're empowering the current state, right? And I knew I couldn't do that anymore, right? Go back to traditional healthcare. So hence the opportunity to join the MedAxiom team came along. And for me, it's the ability to influence and move things forward and finally help to transition healthcare, right? Help people to see the bigger picture, give them ideas, help them see what the possibilities are, and hopefully transition from the very archaic traditional healthcare system that we currently have.
Well, fantastic. No, that sounds like a plan. So tell me a little bit more about MedAxiom and what is the company's mission and what is it that you guys are building?
So MedAxiom, owned by ACC, American College of Cardiology. MedAxiom is a membership organization, and we have 500 plus organizations throughout the United States. And we have this amazing opportunity to meet with our members and do consulting service and provide consulting around the country, from the East Coast to the West Coast and everything in between. We get to see what everybody's doing, right? We get to help people with new leadership structures, with their clinical service line, their transition of faculty to hospitals, everything that possibly could happen. We see it all. And the best part for us is we get to take best practices from around the country and bring them to new sites, right? Because the reality is there's no one perfect solution for anybody. Based on your demographics, where you are in the country, your payer mix, there's so many variables that influence your practice. So for us, it's about taking the tidbits of information that we learned from all of our members and bringing them together and dissecting what would work best. At the same time, trying to move people forward and say, you know what, this is the way cardiovascular care is moving. And I say cardiovascular care because that's what we are. That being said, it's a general healthcare problem. And what, all of the obstacles and pain points that cardiovascular medicine experiences, they're actually healthcare wide, right? They're in all subspecialties and all departments. So for us, it's moving everything forward in one direction.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, is a lot of your consulting on corporate strategy or like a high level strategy or technology or all of the above from, the top to the patient experience? You consult with them on all of those topics.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's everything. It depends what the current obstacle is or pain point for that practice. It's basics from access, right? Getting in to see your doctor in time. How can we help them change their access process? From governance, new people are coming in, new subspecialties, cardiac surgery is now part of the team. How do you create a new governance structure that everybody can agree on? Compensation structures. There's always a reoccurring theme, and it's never a good problem. But compensation is a reoccurring problem that we work with many of our members to figure out how do you modernize compensation, right? So it's not just base fee for service. It's just not based on productivity, but how do you move towards value-based care? Again, everything from strategy. We have a great project happening right now with one of our members. We're helping to look at strategy, right? Network development. What are the other hospitals that we should be including in their practices? How do they want to shape their practice in the future? How we've been doing everything today is great, but guess what? That's not the answer for the future, right? We know that lots of companies are buying up, a lot of these large corporate companies are buying up small hospitals. So what does that mean for patient care, right? How do we integrate all those hospitals so that we're not duplicating services, but rather adding value and extending services into the community? So we get to do all of it. And that's the best part. Again, it's bringing together all these best practices, right?
I love that. And it sounds so exciting and looks like no 2 days are alike. And you're learning, at a really fast pace by understanding the challenges of, growing at a fast pace with technology and the advancements in healthcare, all of that. I mean, as a VP of Care Transformation Services, I'm sure it involves myriads of responsibilities. Can you walk us through a specific project or initiative that you led that stands out in your journey and then in which there was some transformation through cardiovascular organizations to deliver care?
I think, that's, again, the secret sauce from MedAxiom, right? Is that the team is made up of folks with lots of experience all in the cardiovascular world. So it's nurses, it's techs, it's, imaging leaders, it's service line leaders, compensation leaders, all having work. So we all get to come together. We go on site to our clients and get to dissect, whatever the scope of work is at that moment in time. But I have to admit, every single project is not only a learning experience, but it's amazing to go into an organization, meet the people, at the same time recognize we all have the same problems, right? Everybody has the same problems. Everyone's miserable. Nobody has enough people. There's not enough doctors, too many patients. At the same time, it's the best part is we get to put our 2 cents in and see what we've seen and then walk away and hopefully help them add value. So I can't say that there's one favorite thing. A lot of it is understanding the people, obviously. I always say, we deliver, as an administrator, we deliver the same message over and over, but we need to cater the delivery based on the audience, right? A general cardiologist to a proceduralist, to an administrator, it's all very different. So we're constantly, trying to massage the relationships to get people to work together, to see the problem from their perspective, right? From the physician perspective, from the nursing perspective, because again, they all see different parts of the big problem, right? So for me, they're all learning experiences. Every client engagement is special because we get to meet new people and get to see an operation that's run completely different from across the town, right? Or for me, I'm on the East Coast, you go to the West Coast, you go down south, and it's amazing how we all have modified the delivery of care slightly different, but yet we all, obviously, the goal is to take care of patients, right?
For sure, for sure. So, and does any one of those projects stand out from the kind of outcomes that were produced by that particular project? Or, just for our audience to learn, like, what's the nature of these projects? It sounds very interesting, of course, and it's a little bit like what we do, but maybe we're just a subset of it within that digital transformation realm and something that has to do with technology. But it's very similar in the sense that it begins with the same question. Okay, what problems are you facing? And just doing a great job of listening, observing, documenting, understanding the current flow, understanding the current process, and then trying to put together what is that desired future state that you're looking for, and then trying to see how you get from point A to point B. Um, is there anything in particular that you'd like to highlight as an example?
So, I think of two clients specifically, one in Florida and one in Alabama. The pleasure of some of these relationships and the complexity of some of the scope of work is that we're thinking outside the box. We're thinking about the future, not the current state, right? A current state, I think of access, like how are we more efficient in making a patient appointment? Already sounds archaic just saying it, right? So it's the strategy, thinking about the future. How do you build in preventative care into your existing practice? So it's those engagements that are future thinking, people who are trying to be innovative, who are thinking about technology, who are asking us about what technology have you seen out there? Those are the engagements that are most satisfying because it makes us all think, right? It makes us all think about the future. How could we, if you didn't have any existing constraints, how would you want your practice to look, right? So those are always the best engagements, because it allows us to build something the way you would want it to be built, not just modify an existing practice. So there are, I think Baptist Health in Florida is amazing. And the folks who bring us on board just to think about the future. Those are innovative thinkers. Those are the people we want to be working with, right?
Lovely, lovely. Okay, well, that sounds great. Now, in your experience, how can healthcare organizations overcome resistance to adopting new technologies? And when you talk about that, you can lay it out from perspective of the provider, the staff, and also the patients. And are there successful change management strategies that you witnessed yourself?
So yeah, I think education is critical, right? We need to empower the patients to advocate for themselves, right? To be more involved in their own care. We put a lot of responsibility on the clinicians, on all the medical staff. The reality is patients need to be more involved too, right? So it's providing better education to everybody. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier, right? Is the nurses, the doctors, everybody seeing it, trying to see it from each other's perspective, right? We do a bad job of educating people on the entire continuum of care, right? So we need to do a better job. But more specifically, having worked at some large academic medical centers in Boston, the inertia, right? The inability of people wanting to take on work because they're already so busy. And we get that. We all lack bandwidth. That being said, we're not going to change anything. We're not going to make any progress either, right? And the IT department specifically, right? They work really hard. That being said, they're also the biggest obstacle to moving things forward, right? I mean, that's the reality that you go on to this long list. You're in the queue, right? And they'll think about it. Realize, and we know that they have a ton to do, but we need to be able to be more nimble, more agile, right? If we're talking about the IT jargon, we need to, know how to do that. And right now we're not. It's this, we have a lot of amazing ideas. The doctors have great ideas, but they're often overwhelmed just thinking about, emailing the IT department, right? And then you close the door to innovation, to progress. And we can't do that. So I think it starts at the core of the hospital structures, right? These IT departments, they're huge infrastructures, they're huge departments, there's a ton of people, but yet they're not really customer, friendly in the sense of working with different departments, different doctors to figure out how can we be quick, how can we be nimble. And just because we're integrating a new app doesn't mean it's forever, but we should try it. We should see if it works. We should do lots of small pilots all the time and figure out how to do that. It's we know it works. We see often they say, Cedars is doing it, or, some other hospital system. Why can't we try it? And they have a million reasons why we can't try it. We just need to move beyond that. And it's working together and figuring out how we do that. That's the only way we're going to be able to innovate and move things forward.
I agree with you. I think it requires a lot of that persistence and resolve to, want to bring these big changes. And when I think about the providers and the staff, I mean, saying that they wouldn't want a particular new technology, I don't think it makes sense. I mean, if it makes their job much easier, that they're not having to do some of those things manually, why would they say no? So it goes back to what you mentioned. It's about educating them that, listen, this is going to automatically do X, Y, and Z for you. So you're not having to, do this. And this is how it benefits the patient as well. Isn't that the key goal? But you're also right. Like we've run into these challenges working with our customers in healthcare and even beyond. Like we work with Westinghouse Electric, and of course that's nuclear power plants, and they have security just as much, if not more, like the healthcare industry, because disasters could happen if one thing goes wrong. And working with the chief security officer, chief information security officer, and getting those approvals was the most time-consuming thing. But at the same time, with their collaboration, the final product that we came out was also really solid, and we knew that we've done the right testing, and this is going to be secure. So that also was super helpful. But you're right, there's always that initial hump that you have to get through and getting everyone on board. And I feel like for us, what works best is just uniting everyone across the common goal and saying, okay, well, do you not want better outcomes for your patients or a better experience? And no one can say no to that. But just empathizing with them and understanding and educating them, like you said. No, I agree. I agree with you on that. So,
and just to add to that, often the problem is people, they want consensus on one program, right? One app, one specific program. And the reality is there is no one perfect program app for any patient, for any physician practice, because just the fact that people, they're multi-generational practices, they all have different abilities, right? So that being said, we need to be open to multiple programs, multiple apps, knowing that everybody has different, we're all creatures of habit. We like things to be certain ways, and that's okay. But we get really hung up on need one solution, and that's just not reasonable anymore.
True. And no, good point about multi-generational, because I know a lot of the people who've been around and they're used to their ways of doing certain things, or it could be the diagnosis, it could be interacting with the patients. I mean, it could be a little bit challenging to have that change, but at the same time, the younger doctors that are coming up, they grew up, with TikToks and Instagrams, and of course, they would more welcome a knowledge base where they could put in the information and have, certain things verified to another level. And I know that, relatability and then the kinds of tools that you have can also depend on, the generation that you grew up in. So it's a really important point. Now, as a passionate advocate for modernizing healthcare through technology, how do you envision the roles of artificial intelligence and machine learning in improving clinical decision-making or elevating patient outcomes and addressing other healthcare challenges globally, particularly in the regions with limited resources and infrastructure? How do you see that impact coming up with the rise of, these new large language models, with Gen AI, with, AI making its way in all of the different fields?
So first of all, for many people, when you say AI, machine learning, it's still very intimidating, right? But the reality is it's all around us. We just don't even realize that our entire life is actually, is functioning based on our Netflix, right? Our internet feed, everything is already based. You need to be able to ask questions. You like FaceTime. So that being said, we also need something to help complement their practice, right? Because the reality is 1 in 4 cardiologists are over 61 years old, right? They're starting to phase out. They're slowing down. We know people are living longer, and guess what? They're sicker because they're living longer, right? So there are not enough doctors, or not enough nurses to take care of this patient population that's growing and growing and growing. So what do, right? You got to find something to connect it, right? Some way to create bandwidth. So that's technology, in my opinion, right? There's a lot of amazing opportunity out there. So we should be able to complement physicians' practices by giving them all this information, a summarized version of it, right, of what's happening. Because the reality is primary care can't keep up with all the new medications, nor can our cardiologist, right? All the different, the diabetes medications, your rheumatology medications, it's just too much for any one person, right? So we got to figure out how we do this at the same time, trying to help our patients. So we have to figure out how to integrate. AI, and I know it works. I've seen it. I've had the luxury of being part of a program at the Brigham. That was amazing. It was AI driven, run by pharmacists, very little doctor interaction. And the patients loved it. We were able to get patients to goal, get their cholesterol under control in 12 weeks. It usually takes years to do this because by the time you come back to see your doctor and recognize, we haven't made any progress, let's tie a new prescription, right? It takes years. So we know the long term, this is a cost savings to the system. You have to educate patients. You have to give them opportunities. That being said, if you build these systems, you should be able to spread them out into the community, right? The folks who don't have healthcare, blood pressure, your cholesterol, diabetes, these are all preventable diseases. We know that. That being said, we're all going to continue to eat our cheeseburgers. We're never going to exercise enough. So we need to do more, right? We keep telling them they need to exercise more, but they're not, right? Again, we tell, there's a ton of research that obviously a leaner diet, less meat is better for you. We know that, but you know what? We still like a cheeseburger. I do. My husband could live on cheeseburgers, right? So we got to do more.
Yeah.
We need to spread the education, and it's really through technology, right? These AI-driven, platforms that are built that you extend into the community that people could use them on their devices, on their iPhones. Most people don't even realize they have smartphones, but guess what? Everyone has a smartphone. So we should be able to build this into their phones so they can monitor their own medical their blood pressure, their cholesterol, all this stuff, and know the consequences of it. That's the problem is they know they have high blood pressure, but they don't realize the consequences of it. And that's the problem. It's the education, right? So we need to do a better job of educating, the patients. There's great programs out there. I think of Mytonomy. They built these amazing educational modules, right? That are like these short little tidbit videos that tell you what happens if you don't take your cholesterol med. What happens if you don't take your diabetes medication? Like, what are the consequences? And that's what people need to see. Like, holy cow, those are the symptoms I'm having today. And this is what could happen to me, right? But unfortunately, it doesn't, real life, how we live our life. And then when we go see the doctor and you don't tell him everything that's happening to you because you only see him every 8 months if you're lucky, there's just it's too fragmented. There's too much disconnect between what's happening and how we're feeling. And by the time we see our doctor, right? So I honestly believe the technology is what's going to bridge it all together and help move healthcare in the right direction.
I love it. And I think you touch on a lot of very important things there. Of course, these advancements, it's very hard to keep up with. I mean, there are new medications that keep coming up for the good, new research that keeps coming up. And, you're right. I mean, the personalized medicine is extremely important as well, where you could really give medicine on the basis of how quickly the patient can, digest it, and, other important markers can be there as well. And you touched on the remote monitoring as well, which is extremely important to just always have that end goal in sight. Well, switching gears here. So wearable devices and health apps, they are becoming increasingly popular. From your perspective, how can these consumer technologies be leveraged to drive preventative healthcare and wellness initiatives? And also, if we consider like overall IoT's potential to transform many different industries, including the healthcare delivery, what role do you see IoT playing in a more interconnected and efficient healthcare ecosystem?
Yeah. So again, back to how do you complement your physician's practice? This is part of it, right? In fact, this is the real life every day at home. How do you monitor yourself, right? Again, the scales, your blood pressure cuffs, there's all this stuff all around us, right? Your watch. It doesn't have to be an Apple Watch, lots of different devices out there that can monitor everything that's happening in real time. And that's what we need to do is, first of all, is educate folks the importance of it. And if you're going to buy the device, buy the one that you can remotely translate all that information up to your doctor, right? Or at least to yourself. So you have it. So when you go into your doctor, you can put it into your chart. So that, again, when you go see your doctor in 8 months, you forget about these details, right? But these details are important. And that being said, as we transition healthcare, we should have a way to remotely monitor the patients in real time and see what's happening. And this is the importance of what you guys do, right? These real-time devices, these apps that help connect patients with their doctors, not FaceTime, but just electronically. And then, we build these systems that create these red flags when there's a problem. So it's not because you're coming in through the emergency, but it's because, this is funny. Your blood pressure has really spiked the last 2 days, or your weight has gone up. Something's clearly happening, right? So I think this is the bridge, right? Is the devices to real life and to your doctors, but it doesn't work if we don't educate people, right? It all comes back down to education. And that's the problem, is it finding an outlet, how best to educate everyone is problematic, right? We don't have the opportunity. So we need to make the opportunity. We need to create the opportunity so that, again, we're all working together seamlessly, right? To take care of patients. Aside from patient care, we already know we spend way too much in healthcare unsuccessfully, and this is all part of fixing the problems, right? It's not just patient care. It's the economics of our country. It's creating more jobs. It's paying people appropriately, actually, is what it is, right? And this is how we eventually get to value-based care, and we move away from this fee-for-service that we currently live under, this umbrella that makes it really hard to know that we're doing the best things for the patients, right? So anyway, I kind of digress there a little bit, but it's the bridge, right?
That makes sense. And I think these technologies are going to really help us increased wellness, of course, and that longevity. And like you said, I think it's monitoring and having that data, the ability to understand what are your symptoms and then recording those to take it back. And even as simple as that. I mean, we did an application for John Hopkins, a survey application, that they were able to use and get some really important data, and then hence the insights. Similarly for, cancer community, we did an application where cancer patients would see how they were feeling, their mood and other symptoms, and then have that log. And that's very important. But now, and this is a few years ago, but now all that can be integrated with our smartwatches, our other devices. And then people that are more at risk could even have additional devices that are more, healthcare centric. They may not be the most, the best fashion statement, but again, for health, you could have all these different devices that could be transmitting that information even real time. Like if someone has a pacemaker or other devices that are, in their body or outside just for monitoring, I think those could have a huge impact, in wellness and longevity as well. But, the technology evolves so quickly too. I mean, and as the technology evolves, the role of healthcare professionals also changes. How do you see the integration of technology impacting the roles of physicians and nurses and other healthcare providers in future? Like, how would their jobs change, looking at the pace at which, these advancements are coming at us, and, with AI coming as well, or becoming more popular?
Yeah. So before I answer the question, I just want to touch base really quick on, you said, everything is happening so quickly and evolving, because it is. We know the research and the development of technology and drugs and devices is moving ahead really quick. Unfortunately, the actual implementation and the integration of new meds and new devices is not. It typically takes, especially for medication, something like 10 to 12 years to integrate it into regular practice, right? From the time a new drug is, FDA approved and considered to be value added to a patient, right? That it will help them save their life. It often isn't integrated because guess what? The primary care doctors or that specific specialist, they don't have the knowledge, right? They can't keep up with everything. So it takes a long time before it becomes part of their new practice, right? Which is understandable. But that being said, we need to do things faster, right? There's a reason these new drugs are coming out, because they're better. So that's part of this, technology, right? Education, how do you move things along quicker and faster? Because this is part of the reason that new drugs cost so much to develop, right? Because nobody actually uses them for 7, 10, 12 years. So, these companies need to make their money. I get it. So that's part of the problem. Next problem is, the integration of, the home health centers, right? All this new trend, which it's not even a trend. This is where we're going to end up, right? Is how do you transition all these inpatients to at-home care? Because we know it works. Here in Boston, Bergamo Women's Hospital, they've done some great job. They, in helping originally come up with some of these models and now integrating them into the community. So we know they work. We know they drive down costs. What does that mean for the people in the brick and mortar, right? There's also a lot of data to suggest that right now we're 80% ambulatory. And I think in, the next 7 to 10 years, we're going to be 30% ambulatory, right? So that means the home health and devices,
Wow.
right? That's where we're moving, the digital integration. So how do we do that? Again, I think it's education, right? We need to teach the value of what everybody does, how we can all be part of the program, the process. Because guess what? We still need the nurses, we still need the doctors, you still need the NPs, you still need the pharmacists are critical to mission too. But it's making sure everyone is working to the top of their licensure, right? Making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And the nurses aren't just answering the calls because guess what? There's a lot more value that they have. Make sure the pharmacists are doing appropriately prescribing, doing what they're supposed to do. And again, making sure everybody is working appropriately. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be face to face, but it's the technology that's going to make sure that it's all connecting everybody. It's seamless. It's up to date. It's HIPAA compliant. It's a CRM model like on steroids, right? Everybody should be able to see what's happening. And just because you have an Apple Watch and somebody else has, some other watch, or their blood pressure cuff is by one company, it should still all integrate. Everybody doesn't have to use the same stuff, but meanwhile, all that information around us should be integrated into your medical record, right? So I think, I think there's a lot of variables and there's no one solution, but I think that's also the beauty of it. There is no one solution. There should be options for everybody, right? There should be options for, folks who English isn't their first language, right? There should be folks who are incredibly educated, more sophisticated models, right? Devices, different things. If you're chronic care, very specific based to chronic care. At the same time, it's easy to talk about. It's not easy to do, but we all need to be nimble and know that this is the direction we're moving in, and we have to stop complaining and actually be part of the change, right?
Totally, totally. No, well said. And I like how you describe in terms of the technology evolving. Looks like there are really the three key phases from the research to the FDA approval to the awareness. And I think what you're saying is the research has now caught up. So there's a lot of research that's, making great things available, great research papers, new insights. But then also the FDA process could maybe use, some efficiencies that it could be done faster, although we know that safety is number one concern. So the trials and all that needs to come in, and it needs to, meet that process. So, but then that final step, awareness, I feel like that can be done, a lot better. So healthcare industry often grapples with interoperability. I know you touched on that a little bit, like everything, needs to have that standardization. How do you see technology playing a role in improving data exchange and collaboration among different healthcare systems and providers? Because I feel like this is a real problem because, within the US, we have all these different states, and then sometimes they have different laws for not just the data exchange, but they have different, laws for licensing. But I think just if we look at interoperability challenges overall, and I like how you described that the more of inpatient needs to be transitioned to at home for the betterment of the patients itself. But I think with all of this, what other changes in interoperability or what mindset changes would help the healthcare industry overall?
So it's a good question. And, this is definitely from the government perspective, right? In fact, it's easier, I think, to do this than to change reimbursement, right? But would help progress medicine in the right direction faster. One of them, you mentioned it, the licensing, right? Right now, the doctors are supposed to be licensed in that state to provide medical, clinical support. And we know that's not reasonable, right? First of all, patients are traveling, everyone's traveling all over the place, right? So in theory, I live in Boston. Everybody goes south for the winter. The doctors still talk to their patients in Florida because the patients call, right? So I think we need to be more lenient and assume that, again, if you're licensed in Massachusetts, that the same licensure should be applicable in California, right? And that's something, it's shocking that we haven't been able to make progress in this area, right? But, this is something the government needs to step up and do something quicker than not, is help doctors. So again, spreading bandwidth, right? The patient shouldn't need three doctors. Their primary care should be able to function wherever they're at the same time, that's not even good for the patient, the continuity of care, right? Every time you go somewhere, you talk to somebody else or you go into the ED. Again, these are all obstacles in the system, right? We actually just create more work. So that's one of them, is the ability for doctors and nurse practitioners and pharmacists to be able to practice across state lines. That should be period, right? It shouldn't be that complicated. Uh,
True.
and then it's obviously, I keep referring back to like that one plug, that now cell phones are required to have that one plug. Like somehow the government was able to step in, right? Clearly that was so important, but it was a nuisance, right? Versus it's much more efficient and cost effective to have one plug. We need to come up with that one plug. The majority of the healthcare systems, not all of them, but a lot of them are on Epic, as we know, right? And we have Cerner, we have all these other ones. We still have a few that are on the homegrown system, but we need to make it more seamless, right? For everybody to plug in and see the information. We know it's possible. We have a lot of concierge practices that practice nationwide, and somehow they're able to see their information easily, but these, large systems cannot. So we need to make it easier, quicker, faster. And that's something it feels like the government should be able to step in. And that shouldn't be a huge hurdle, right?
Right.
It seems
Being able to
reasonable that you should
standardize.
licensure, that they should be able to say that if you're licensed in any of these states, assuming the regulatory requirements are A through Z, it applies everywhere, right? Um,
Absolutely. There can be some reciprocity as well, and even for other countries as well, like, for Canada, and especially even if you, like for PCP, I understand it may take time, but of course for therapists or, a speech therapist, I mean, even they are supposed to have a license in that particular state. So, at times it doesn't make sense, or at least maybe we're not aware of some of the challenges that may come with it. But I think from what I'm hearing is a lot of these large organizations that are, the makers of these EMRs and EHRs, they need to collaborate and standardize a lot of the data. And also, somebody should take initiative and help standardize and, negotiate with all of the big providers, and then just have that as a standard practice.
I
A lot
mean,
of time.
somehow that was super important that we needed to pass a law on that, right? But,
Yeah,
all the things that are super critical to mission, somehow, people are overwhelmed by it, right? And we know it's because there's a lot of money at stake, right? There's a lot of companies, a lot of, a lot of politics. But we just have to move forward.
absolutely. Are there particular emerging technologies or trends that you find particularly intriguing or disruptive?
So I think, again, I mentioned it previously, when I was at the Brigham, we created this amazing EHR agnostic platform that had open APIs that you could, plug in a bunch of stuff. So, that was the beginning of, you see something and you recognize it works, and we need to keep figuring out how do we move forward and not backwards. So, and that was a home built system. But again, you realize that it's totally possible, right? So that was the beginning of sparking my curiosity. And then there's a ton of companies out there, right? I mentioned it also, my autonomy, education. Education is critical to all of this, right? Companies like that who build education modules and help create bandwidth are critical to mission. I think of there's a ton of, as you know now, app for depression, right? Stuff like that we need to figure out how to create these, different tools based on your patient population, right? Give people options and tell them, so there is no shame. Like, document your food diary. This is your mental health. We need to give people these options. At MedAxiom, we have this amazing luxury of working with lots of startup companies who are trying to break into the industry or have new technology, and help them through building their business plan, and helping engage them with some of our clients for to build some awareness. But I'll be honest, there's no one perfect system. And there's no one app that I say everybody should use it. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Hence, everybody should try different things and see what works for them, as long as it sticks, right? So that's the amazing part, is like you guys, there's a ton of stuff you guys are doing that are super cool. Same thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I mean, huge impact that it can have as well. For me, I mean, of course, AI. at the risk of repeating ourselves, I mean, that is going to be a game changer in the healthcare industry as well to enable personalized medicine that we've talked about, personalized care. I mean, of course, telehealth, has become huge after the pandemic. People have become more open to, taking appointments like that as well. And for a lot of different types of appointments, it makes more sense to not have to go all the way and, just do a meeting. I mean, when I'm traveling around the globe, I still have my PCP and I just do like a Zoom meeting type of a call. And, I'm able to get good advice. I think what else I'm excited about is, of course, the mental health. I think that's huge. That's, overlooked at. And then with telehealth and with, the removing the stigma as such from the society of, getting a therapist. I'm a big, proponent of that as well. And last but not least, I would say like genomics. I think that can be huge as well. Like, there's a lot of different medications depending on your genes could affect you in a certain way. And I think the breakthrough there is just mind-boggling as well. So let's see. I think the next few years are going to be, very important, very critical. So as we navigate the digital transformation of healthcare, what steps organizations like, somebody who's a healthcare organization, what steps can they take to ensure the benefits of technology are, equitably distributed and avoiding the exacerbation of the existing healthcare disparities that we have already? Like, as an organization that's really eager for digital transformation, how could they make sure that they're contributing in reducing, that disparity in healthcare?
So I'm going to make a shameless plug for one of the programs that MedAxiom has helped build with Wharton Executive Education. It's a business program, right? It's the business of cardiology. Because the reality is, everybody needs to work together to move healthcare forward, right? And the doctors do their thing, the nurses do their thing, me, the administrators, we do our thing. And we often don't speak the same jargon, and it takes us much longer to be able to come to a consensus to agree to move something in a certain direction, right? So one of the things that MedAxiom has been passionate about is business education for fellows who are, soon to be practicing cardiologists or cardiology doctors in training. So helping them to understand what's happening, right? The service line, digital transformation, innovation, all the stuff that's happening, so that when they go out into practice, they feel like they can participate in these conversations, right? They can advocate for themselves. They can try to figure out how to make the business proposal to bring in new digital applications into their practice, right? Because again, doctors have lots of great ideas. We know they're really smart people, right? But they're often not at the table making these decisions. And by the time we engage them, it's too late, right? So often the decisions have already been made. So we need everybody to be at the table together. We need to actively have these conversations. We're making decisions. We're making a lot of decisions that affect the practice of doctors, right? Without doctors. So it's a big problem if you ask me, right? So I think they need to be at the table. And I think education, patients need to be better educated, nurses, everybody needs to understand the business value of what we're doing. And that's what we're actively trying to do with doctors for that reason alone.
Do you also mean that maybe the minorities need to have a seat at the table where all the decisions are made, and then through education and, through all of the continued education as well, that could have a huge impact?
So 100%. This is part of educating all fellows, right? So when you go back to wherever you're from, right, those inner, city hospitals, wherever it is that you work, and you can advocate for yourself, right? Advocate for new programs, understand why you need to add new technology to your programs because of your patient demographics, right? You're working to be your community, but often they don't have the tools to be able to do this, right? So we need to make sure everybody's armed with tools, which is business knowledge, to be able to apply that to their practice.
Yeah, and being more aware of the problem as well, right? Like a lot of people may not even know that there's a problem that exists because a lot of the clinical trials don't have that diverse, population on which they're tested. So it may not necessarily work as well for a certain race, certain demographic. And, that goes back to, spreading that awareness,
Yep.
for the future younger generation of doctors. And I think I agree with you. Well, this is fantastic. I guess speaking of, with your finger on the pulse of healthcare trends, what advice do you have for young professionals and entrepreneurs looking to make a positive impact in the ever evolving intersection of technology and healthcare?
So, one, again, I can't say it enough, education is understanding what's happening around you, right? And you need to be able to speak that language with your business folks, right? Or with your clinical folks. And the second is, if you have a good idea, advocate for yourself, right? Don't take the first no. And, just because somebody doesn't think it's a great idea, if your gut tells you this is better or this is, for whatever value it adds to a system for a certain patient population, keep pushing it forward. And if it's not there, maybe it's somewhere else, right? But find the people who are your advocates and who support you and help come up and transition great ideas into actual business, right? Because again, I'm always impressed on how many bad ideas make it out into market, right? You see it too, right? It's like, seriously, this made it and all this other stuff hasn't made it? It's actually very disappointing, but all it takes is a really good website, some great marketing, and it's amazing what you can put out there. And the doctors obviously don't have that business sense to grade it, for that website or that great marketing. We need to help them understand the business value. So I think education and being their own advocate, just like our patients. Honestly, we know that we all have to advocate for ourselves, right? There's no one else looking out for us because sadly, people just get lost in the shuffle. And that's understandable. There's a lot happening. So we all need to advocate for ourselves. And that's not only and for our own medical, our own healthcare, but it's our own professional careers too, right?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting way to look at it. I mean, I think, be the change you want to see, and persistence and resolve seem like is a common theme. I love how across the board, we've talked about education and awareness as well. I think my 2 cents for the entrepreneurs would be, a lot of times, we have hypothesis and we feel like something's going to work, but data driven and evidence based, could be strategies that could be, extremely important. But at the same time, I agree. I mean, if it feels right, and if, it serves that certain population or that need, then you gotta go and be assertive and speak for yourself and take a stand. And I think that's definitely gonna help us move in the right direction. Well, Anna, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. This has been such an amazing conversation. I can't believe it's almost been an hour that we've been talking. Thank you again for all what you do and your contributions in the healthcare industry, through consulting, through helping all these different healthcare institutions.
Yeah, no, thank you for the invitation. This was a ton of fun. I look forward to the stuff you guys continue to innovate. And same here, right? Hopefully our paths cross in a more, business environment. It'd be fun to see it play out, right? But again, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye.